I was folding laundry on a quiet Thursday morning when my phone buzzed. I didn't expect much. Maybe a spam call or a check-in from the library. But when I saw the name on the screen, I nearly dropped the towel in my hands. Ethan. My son hadn't called in months. We used to talk more when he was in college, before Chloe came into the picture and the wedding swept him into another world. But today, he called. "Mom," his voice cracked through the line. "You're going to be a grandma." I sat down right there on the couch, socks in my lap, heart suddenly too full to hold. "A grandma," I whispered. "Are you serious?" He laughed. "Dead serious. Chloe just found out this morning. We haven't told anyone else yet. You're the first." My eyes welled up. "Oh, honey, that's the best news I've heard in years." We talked for a bit about cribs and paint colors, morning sickness and baby names. He even asked me if I still had the old rocking chair in the attic. Then came the part I didn't even hesitate on. He mentioned how their condo was too small, that Chloe wasn't feeling well, and that he was trying to fix up the guest room to make it a nursery. "But money's tight," he said almost sheepishly. I didn't wait for him to ask. That afternoon, I wired $150,000 into his account. I told him it was for the baby, for their home, for peace of mind. That night, I sat by the fireplace in my lakehouse, holding a photo of Ethan when he was 5, missing a front tooth, grinning like he owned the world. I remembered the sleepless nights, the way he clung to me when he had nightmares, the peanut butter sandwiches I packed every single morning for 10 years straight. Maybe we hadn't been close lately. Maybe life had pulled him in directions I didn't understand. But that call, it lit something inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a mother again. And in that moment, I truly believed that maybe, just maybe, my son was finding his way back to me. It started with a sound. I just finished making a pot of tea and walked into the living room when I heard Ethan's voice. The phone was on the coffee table, still on speaker. I must have bumped something earlier because it had redialed him by accident. And before I could hang up, I heard her voice. "Chloe." "Did she send the money yet?" she asked, her voice sharp. Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, worked like a charm. Told you the fake baby plan would break her wide open." My heart dropped. "She's so desperate to matter," Chloe sneered. "It's actually kind of pathetic." I stood frozen, mug still in my hand. My tea had gone cold. "Don't get soft," Ethan muttered. "Once she signs over the house, we're set. The insurance paperwork's already filed. Just need the timing to be natural." I felt the room shift around me, like the floor tilted and nothing stayed still. I wanted to believe I'd heard wrong, misunderstood, anything. But I didn't. That wasn't the voice of a tired son trying to make things work. That was the voice of a man plotting something carefully, intentionally. And Chloe, she wasn't just along for the ride. She was steering. That's when it hit me. That moment 2 years ago when Ethan insisted on taking me up that hill to see the sunrise. The brakes on his car failed that morning. I told the police it must have been a mechanical issue. I'd even apologized to Ethan for ruining the day. But now I saw everything for what it really was. This wasn't the beginning of our reconnection. It was a countdown. I stood there a long time, holding the cold mug to my chest like a shield. And for the first time in my life, I admitted something I'd never dared say out loud. My son does not love me. Not really. He loves what I can give him. He loves what I represent on a balance sheet. But me, Margaret, the woman who raised him, she never really mattered to him at all. And that truth, that cold, clear, brutal truth, cut deeper than anything he could have said out loud. They showed up unannounced 2 days later. I was out watering the herbs on the porch when I heard tires crunch the gravel driveway. Ethan stepped out first, all smiles and easy charm, waving like everything was normal. Chloe followed, sunglasses perched on her head like she owned the place. "Thought we'd drop by," Ethan said, handing me a brown paper bag. "Brought you some supplements." Supplements. I nodded politely, letting them in. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I played the part. Warm, gracious, predictable. We sat in the living room, and before long, Ethan leaned back and said casually, "You know, with the baby coming and our apartment being so cramped, we were thinking we could stay here. Just for a while." Chloe added quickly, "It's really not healthy for me or the baby. This place is so peaceful. It would be perfect." I just smiled. "Of course." Ethan lit up, but I could see the greed behind his eyes. Then came the real play. "Well," he said, scratching his head, "if we're going to be living here anyway, maybe it makes sense to put the house in my name. That way I can handle taxes and repairs for you." Chloe nodded, syrupy sweet. "You've done enough, Margaret. Let us carry the weight now." I didn't flinch. I nodded again. "Sure." They looked stunned, like I'd handed them a winning lottery ticket. They didn't see the hollowness behind my smile. Later that night, I called for Toby. He didn't come. I checked every room, then the yard, then the road. His leash still hung by the door, his food untouched. Finally, I found Ethan in the kitchen pouring himself a drink. "Toby?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't look up. "Got rid of him this morning. Too old, always in the way." Just like that, 12 years of loyalty tossed like garbage. I didn't cry, I couldn't. Something inside me collapsed so quietly I barely noticed it fall. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. Not just without company, alone in the way that breaks something you can't get back. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to pause for just a moment. If this story is hitting close to home, if you've ever discovered that someone you loved and trusted was using you, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. What city? What country? And if you've ever had to protect yourself from your own family, share that too. Your story matters. Now let me tell you how I survived. It was the laptop that did it. Ethan had left it open on the couch. Careless, arrogant, like he didn't think I had the sense to touch it. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I'd just been tidying up. But the screen caught my eye. A browser window was still open. The headline read, "Can life insurance payouts be collected after accidental drownings?" My stomach turned. I scrolled. There were links on how to stage missing person cases in remote areas, articles on claim timelines, and a saved PDF titled Margaret Whitmore Policy 2M.pdf. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the insurance office in town. The young man at the desk looked up, smiling politely. "How can I help you today?" I tried to sound calm. "I just need to check if there's any active life insurance policy under my name." He typed. His smile faded. "Yes, ma'am, there is." "Who purchased it?" He looked uneasy. "I'm not at liberty to say, but it's listed as a high-tier plan. Beneficiary listed as Ethan Whitmore." The blood drained from my face. I thanked him, walked out, and sat in my car for a long time before turning the key. He'd really done it. Filed the papers, marked me for death, all while sleeping under my roof, calling me mom, eating food I cooked with my own hands. The lakehouse suddenly felt like a trap, like he was just waiting for the right moment to make me disappear. But what Ethan didn't know was that I'd stopped being blind. I drove to the pharmacy, picked up gloves, a new lockbox, and a burner phone. That night, while they laughed in the living room, I slipped into the garage and found Chloe's toiletry bag. Inside was a small bottle, prescription-grade sedatives, half full. They'd planned something, and now so would I. I didn't cry that night. I didn't rage or break things. I just made tea, sat by the window, and let my mind go quiet. I was done being the victim in someone else's story. From this point forward, I would write the ending. Mine. The invitation came over breakfast. Chloe buttered her toast with a smile so bright it nearly blinded me. "We thought it might be nice to go on a little outing," she said sweetly. "Some fresh air by the lake. Just us. You deserve a break." Ethan chimed in, pouring me a glass of orange juice. "Yeah, just a quick canoe trip across the lake. Quiet, private." The word private stuck like a splinter. I nodded, smiled, played along. "That sounds lovely." They didn't know I'd already prepared. The night before, I'd packed a small emergency kit, burner phone, flare, my ID, and a thin vial of clear liquid I'd poured back into their own water bottle. The sedative they meant for me? Well, they'd just be having it a little early. We set off mid-morning. The lake shimmered under the sun like it didn't know the monsters floating above it. I sat quietly between them in the canoe. Ethan handed me a bottle of electrolyte water. The exact brand he always claimed gave him mental clarity. I took it, smiled, and pretended to sip. Then I reached into my bag and offered them each a snack. "I made your favorite," I said, "peanut butter banana bars." They took them greedily, laughing like children. 15 minutes later, Chloe slumped against the side of the canoe. Ethan followed, groaning, blinking rapidly. He looked at me, panicked. "What did you—" I leaned forward, speaking softly. "You shouldn't leave your pills lying around. Someone might accidentally put them in your food." His eyes widened. Chloe was already out cold. I steered us gently toward the nearest dock, tied the canoe, and texted the sheriff's office from my burner. 2 people unconscious by Miller's Point, maybe under influence. Please send help. Then I walked home. They'd wake up confused, maybe humiliated, but they'd be alive. Me? I'd never felt more awake. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch alone, watching the moon ripple across the lake. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of my own son. He tried to take everything from me. Instead, I took back myself. They never asked me how they got back to shore. They didn't thank me either. Ethan and Chloe returned to the house days later, looking pale, paranoid, and quieter than I'd ever seen them. No more sweet voices. No more fake affection. They barely looked me in the eye. That was fine with me. I gave them 1 week. During that time, I called my attorney, had the deed reviewed, the locks changed, and my will rewritten. I also hired a moving service, prepaid in cash, scheduled for the day after they left for a wellness retreat Chloe booked on a whim. I even smiled when I waved them off. The moment their car disappeared down the gravel road, the truck arrived. I boxed up every trace of them: clothes, chargers, handbags, Ethan's dumb golf trophies. Every last thing went straight to a donation center in town. Then I took a long bath. By the time they returned a week later, bags in hand and smugness restored, I was already sitting on the porch with a glass of lemonade and the paperwork in hand. "This isn't your house," I said simply. They both laughed nervously at first, then louder until they saw the documents. "You signed it over," Ethan hissed. "No," I replied calmly. "You signed an intent to transfer. Never filed, never notarized. You were too busy celebrating to notice the fine print." Chloe's face drained of color. "You tricked us." I stood, walked toward the door, and opened it just enough to toss out the last envelope, the one with their new rental agreement. "It's time you figured out how to stand on your own." Ethan didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, jaw clenched. That evening, I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled vegetables and fresh bread. I ate on the porch alone, peacefully. Toby's leash still hung on the hook. I didn't take it down. Weeks passed. I joined a pottery class at the community center, started an herb garden by the window, picked up a book club. Sometimes Daniel, my late husband's nephew, stopped by to help me fix the old shed. One afternoon, he brought coffee and said, "You look lighter." I smiled, placing a new lavender pot near the porch steps. Maybe I finally am. For the first time in 67 years, I wasn't someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's servant. I was simply me, and that was enough. You know what's strange about betrayal? It doesn't always announce itself with shouting or violence. Sometimes it comes wrapped in kindness. Sometimes it wears your son's face. Sometimes it sounds like concern. For years, I thought being a good mother meant giving without question, trusting without doubt, loving without limits. I thought that if I just kept giving, kept believing, kept hoping, eventually Ethan would see me, really see me. Not as a checkbook or a house deed or a problem to solve, but as his mother, The woman who stayed up all night when he had the flu. The woman who drove him to soccer practice in the rain. The woman who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. But that phone call, the one I wasn't supposed to hear, it shattered that illusion completely. And you know what? As much as it hurt, as much as it broke something inside me I didn't think could break, it also set me free. Because for the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for him. I stopped rewriting his cruelty as confusion. I stopped convincing myself that deep down, somewhere beneath the greed and the lies, my little boy was still there. He wasn't. Or maybe he was, and this is just who he'd become. Either way, I couldn't save him, and more importantly, I couldn't let him destroy me. The days after I discovered the insurance policy were the hardest of my life. Not because I was afraid of dying, though I was, but because I had to grieve while still living in the same house as the people who wanted me gone. I had to smile at breakfast. I had to make small talk. I had to pretend I didn't know that every kind word, every gentle gesture, every, "How are you feeling, Mom?" was just another step in their plan. It was exhausting, soul-crushing. But it also sharpened me. I started noticing things I'd missed before. The way Chloe watched me when I took my vitamins, like she was timing something. The way Ethan hovered near the staircase, his eyes calculating. The way they both smiled too wide when I mentioned going for a walk alone. They were waiting, and I realized if I didn't act, if I didn't protect myself, no one else would. So I became someone I never thought I'd have to be. Strategic, guarded, one step ahead, not out of anger, though there was plenty of that, but out of survival. The canoe trip was their final move. I'm sure of it. They'd planned it carefully. A quiet morning on the lake. Just the three of us. An accident. A tragedy. Poor Margaret, so frail, fell overboard and couldn't swim. They'd cry at the funeral. They'd comfort each other. And then they'd cash the check and move on with their lives. But they underestimated me. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They thought I was naive because I trusted. They thought that just because I'd spent my life giving, I didn't know how to take. They were wrong. When I put those sedatives in their food, I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was trying to survive. And when I called the sheriff's office, I wasn't trying to get them arrested. I was trying to make sure there was a record, a paper trail, evidence that something had happened on that lake, even if no one could prove what. Because if they tried again, if they came back for me, I wanted the world to know I hadn't gone quietly. I wanted them to know that I saw them, really saw them, and I refused to disappear. The weeks after that were strange. Ethan and Chloe didn't leave immediately. They couldn't. They were too shocked, too confused, too unsure of what I knew and what I'd done. They moved around the house like ghosts, pale and paranoid, speaking in whispers I wasn't supposed to hear, but I heard them. I heard everything now. And I used that time wisely. I called my attorney, Lawrence, a man I'd known for 30 years. I told him everything. The fake pregnancy, the insurance policy, the sedatives, the canoe trip. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said simply, "We need to move fast." Within days, my house was back in my name only, with legal protections that would make it nearly impossible for anyone to contest. My will was rewritten, leaving nothing to Ethan except a single line. To my son, Ethan, I leave the truth. You know what you did. Lawrence also helped me file a restraining order pending evidence. We didn't have enough for criminal charges, not yet, but we had enough to make sure they couldn't come near me again without consequences. When I showed Ethan the paperwork, when I watched his face crumble as he realized he'd lost, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, sad, relieved, but not victorious, because this wasn't a victory. This was survival, and survival doesn't come with applause. It comes with quiet mornings and locked doors and the knowledge that you chose yourself when no one else would. After they left, I spent days just sitting in the house, letting the silence settle around me like a blanket. It wasn't the same silence as before. Before, the quiet felt heavy, oppressive, like waiting for something terrible to happen. Now, it felt light, peaceful, mine. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. This house, this beautiful lake house that my late husband and I had built together, it was safe again. It was home again. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I started small. I repainted the guest room, the one Ethan had wanted to turn into a nursery for the baby that never existed. I painted it a soft yellow, the color of morning light. I hung new curtains. I put fresh flowers on the dresser, and I turned it into a reading room, just for me. Then I tackled the garden. I planted tomatoes and basil and lavender. I built a small bench by the water where I could sit in the evenings and watch the sun set over the lake. I bought a new bird feeder and hung it near the kitchen window. Every morning, cardinals and finches would come, filling the air with song. I also got a new dog, not to replace Toby, nothing could ever do that, but because the house felt too quiet without the sound of paws on the floor. I named her Stella. She was a rescue, a golden retriever mix with one floppy ear and a tail that never stopped wagging. She followed me everywhere, slept at the foot of my bed, and reminded me every single day that loyalty still existed in this world. Slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt my life. Not around other people, not around expectations or obligations, but around myself, around what made me happy, what made me feel alive. I joined a pottery class at the community center and discovered I had a knack for it. My hands, the same hands that had folded Ethan's laundry and cooked his meals and signed away my money, they could create something beautiful, something that belonged only to me. I also started volunteering at the local animal shelter. Every Saturday I'd go in and walk the dogs, clean the cages, sit with the cats who were too scared to trust anyone. And in caring for them, I found a piece of myself I thought I'd lost, the piece that still believed in goodness, in second chances, in the possibility of healing. Daniel, my late husband's nephew, started coming by more often, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely seemed to enjoy my company. We'd sit on the porch, drink coffee, and talk about nothing in particular. He never asked about Ethan, never pried. He just showed up, fixed whatever was broken, and left me feeling a little less alone. One afternoon, he brought his daughter, Emma, a bright-eyed 10-year-old who loved animals almost as much as I did. She spent the whole visit playing with Stella, throwing sticks into the lake and laughing in that pure, unguarded way only children can. Before they left, Emma hugged me and said, "You have the best house, Miss Margaret. It feels happy here." I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The house did feel happy, because I was happy. Not every day, not perfectly, but genuinely, and that was enough. I also started writing, nothing fancy, just journal entries, letters I'd never send, thoughts I needed to get out of my head and onto paper. I wrote about Ethan, about the boy he used to be and the man he became. I wrote about the moment I heard that phone call and how it felt like the ground opened up beneath me. I wrote about Toby and how I still cried sometimes when I saw his leash hanging by the door. But I also wrote about Stella, about Daniel and Emma, about the pottery class and the garden and the mornings when the sunlight hit the lake just right and everything felt possible again. And slowly the good memories started to outnumber the bad. One day, about 6 months after Ethan left, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single page, handwritten. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I don't expect you to believe me. I don't expect you to respond. I just needed to say it. I'm sorry." I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, placed it in a drawer, and went about my day. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because I didn't owe him anything. Not my forgiveness, not my time, not my energy. He made his choices, and I made mine. And maybe someday, years from now, I'll open that drawer again and feel something other than sadness. But today wasn't that day, and that was okay. I've learned a lot in these past months. I've learned that kindness isn't weakness, that trusting people doesn't make you a fool, that giving your heart to someone, even when they break it, doesn't mean you were wrong to try. But I've also learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, that walking away from people who hurt you, even when they're family, isn't cruelty, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be someone's victim. And I've learned that it's never too late to start over. At 67, I thought my life was winding down. I thought the best years were behind me. But I was wrong. These past months, rebuilding my life on my own terms, living in a house that feels like mine again, waking up without fear, they've been some of the best months of my life. Not because everything is perfect. It's not. I still have hard days. I still miss the son I thought I had. I still grieve the relationship that never really existed. But I'm free. Free from manipulation. Free from fear. Free from the weight of trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. And that freedom, it's worth more than anything Ethan could have taken from me. There's something profound about reclaiming your life after someone tries to steal it from you. Not just your money or your property, but your actual life, your breath, your heartbeat, your future. When I think about how close I came to trusting them completely, to getting in that canoe without knowing what they'd planned, it makes my blood run cold. But it also makes me grateful. Grateful that I heard that phone call. Grateful that I was smart enough to act. Grateful that I chose to fight instead of fade. Some people might call what I did revenge, drugging them with their own sedatives, calling the authorities, watching them panic. But it wasn't revenge. It was self-defense. It was survival. It was me refusing to be the casualty in their greed story, and I won't apologize for that. I won't apologize for protecting myself when no one else would. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, though that nearly destroyed me. The hardest part was accepting that the son I loved, the little boy who used to hold my hand and tell me I was the best mom in the world, either never existed or died somewhere along the way. I kept searching for him in Ethan's eyes, in his voice, in the way he moved through the house. I kept waiting for some flicker of recognition, some moment where the mask would slip and my real son would emerge, horrified by what he'd become, begging for forgiveness. But that moment never came, because Ethan wasn't wearing a mask. This was who he was. And accepting that, truly accepting it, felt like mourning someone who was still alive. I had to grieve the son I thought I had while watching the stranger he'd become walk through my house, plot my death, and smile at me over breakfast. That kind of grief. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a timeline. It just sits inside you, heavy and cold, reminding you that love doesn't always mean safety, that family doesn't always mean loyalty, that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. But grief, as heavy as it is, it also clears space. Space for truth. Space for boundaries. Space for the life you deserve to live. And once I let myself grieve, once I stopped pretending that Ethan would magically transform back into the son I remembered, I could finally start building something new. Not a relationship with him. He destroyed that beyond repair, but a relationship with myself. One built on honesty and self-respect and the knowledge that I am worth protecting, even from my own child. I think about my late husband sometimes, especially on quiet evenings when the lake turns that particular shade of purple-blue and the air smells like pine and water. He would have been devastated by what Ethan did, but he also would have been proud of how I handled it. He always said I was stronger than I gave myself credit for, that I had a spine of steel hidden under all that kindness. I never believed him. I thought he was just being sweet. But maybe he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Maybe he knew that when the time came, when I was pushed to my absolute limit, I wouldn't break. I'd bend, yes. I'd crack, absolutely. But I wouldn't shatter. I'd find a way to survive. And I did. Not gracefully, not perfectly, but I did. And every morning when I wake up in this house, in this bed, breathing air that belongs to me and no one else, I feel him here. Not as a ghost, but as a presence. A reminder that I was loved once. Really loved, without conditions or calculations. And that love, even though he's gone, it still lives inside me. It still guides me. It still reminds me what real family looks like. And it's nothing like what Ethan offered. I've also started thinking about what comes next, not in a morbid way, but in a practical one. I'm 67, I'm healthy, thank God, but I won't live forever. And when I do eventually pass, I want it to be on my terms, surrounded by people who actually love me, leaving behind something meaningful, not just money or property, but a legacy of resilience, of refusing to be a victim, of choosing myself even when it was terrifying. I've started working with Lawrence on setting up a small foundation. Nothing huge, just enough to help other older adults who find themselves in situations like mine, exploited by family, isolated, afraid, unsure where to turn. I want them to know they're not alone, that it's not their fault, that they deserve protection and dignity and the chance to live out their years in peace. I'm calling it the Stella Fund, named after my dog, because she reminds me every single day that loyalty exists, that trust can be rebuilt, that even after betrayal, love is still possible. We're starting small, just a few $1,000s set aside to help people with legal fees, moving costs, emergency housing. But it's something. It's a way to turn my pain into purpose. To make sure that what I went through, as terrible as it was, wasn't for nothing. And honestly, working on this project has given me more joy than anything Ethan ever did, because this isn't about obligation or guilt or trying to earn someone's love. This is about choice, about using what I have to help people who need it. And that feels good. Really good. In a way that writing checks for Ethan never did, I've also reconnected with some old friends, people I'd drifted away from over the years because I was so focused on trying to maintain a relationship with Ethan that didn't really exist. There's Linda, my college roommate, who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. We met for lunch last month, and it was like no time had passed at all. She told me about her grandkids, her retirement plans, her new hobby of painting landscapes, and I told her everything about Ethan, about Chloe, about the canoe and the insurance policy and how close I came to losing everything. She didn't judge me, didn't tell me I should forgive him or give him another chance. She just held my hand across the table and said, "I'm so glad you're still here." That was it. Simple. True. Exactly what I needed to hear. We've been meeting regularly since then, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just for walks around the lake. And it's reminded me that friendship, real friendship, doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't require constant proof or performance. It just requires showing up, being honest, caring about each other, something Ethan never understood. There's also Margaret. No relation, just a lovely woman I met at the pottery class. She's 72, recently widowed, and has the driest sense of humor I've ever encountered. She makes me laugh in a way I haven't in years. We've started going to estate sales together, hunting for vintage pottery and old books. It's silly, maybe, but it makes me happy. And I've learned that happiness doesn't have to be profound or life-changing. Sometimes it's just spending a Saturday morning with a friend, drinking bad coffee and arguing about whether a chipped teapot is worth $5. These small joys, these simple connections, they've become the foundation of my new life. And they're worth more than any grand gesture or expensive gift Ethan could have ever given me. Because they're real, they're honest, they're freely given and freely received. No strings attached, no hidden agendas, just human beings choosing to be kind to each other, choosing to show up, choosing to care. Last week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to the spot on the lake where everything almost ended, where Ethan and Chloe had planned to make me disappear. I didn't go to torture myself or relive the trauma. I went to reclaim it. I brought Stella with me, packed a small lunch, and sat on the dock for hours. Just me and the water and the sky. And as I sat there, I realized something. That place, that moment, it didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to me. Because I survived it. I outsmarted them. I chose life when they chose greed, and that makes it my victory, not their crime scene. I also scattered some of Toby's ashes there. I'd been keeping them in a small wooden box on my mantel, unsure what to do with them. But sitting there by the water, it felt right. He loved the lake. He loved swimming and chasing ducks and lying in the sun on the shore. So I let him rest there. I whispered, "You were a good boy, the best boy, and I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." And then I let him go. It wasn't closure exactly, but it was peace, and sometimes that's enough. The sun was setting as I walked back to the house, Stella trotting beside me, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: gratitude. Not for what I'd been through, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but for what I'd become because of it. Stronger, wiser, freer, more myself than I'd ever been. I used to think that being a good person meant putting others first, always, no matter what, even if it destroyed you. But I've learned that's not goodness. That's self-sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. Real goodness, the kind that actually sustains you, it includes yourself in the equation. It says, I will be kind, but not at my own expense. I will be generous, but not to people who exploit me. I will love, but only those who love me back. And that's not selfish. That's wisdom. That's survival. That's the lesson I wish I'd learned decades ago, but I'm learning it now. And that's enough. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story, for witnessing my pain and my survival, for reminding me that I'm not alone. If you've ever felt like someone you loved only saw you for what you could give, not who you are, then this story might have echoed something in you. Maybe you've given, forgiven, and waited for someone to come back, only to realize they were never really with you at all. I know stories like these can hurt, but sometimes they remind us that it's never too late to take your power back. Quietly, firmly, without needing revenge. If Margaret's story, if my story touched something in your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to let go of someone you gave everything to? Share in the comments. Your story matters too. And if you're still learning to live for yourself, know this: it's not selfish. It's healing. It's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. And it's the bravest thing you can do.